Thank you so much, Tom. It's such a pleasure to be presenting to everyone today. Of course, I'm a longtime viewer and now a first-time presenter. Let me get my screen sharing going. This is not a mistake. I am going to be showing it in the PowerPoint application view for today's purposes to go through some tips and tricks. But let's get to it with supercharging your slides. Tom was so kind last week to share any questions that were submitted via the registration. And I hope that through this presentation today, I'll address those and give numerous tips that will be useful in your careers. So with that in mind, the agenda for my presentation is going over basic accessibility, and these are not just for PowerPoint slide titles, but for other rich media to be accessible, we need to be looking at alternative text, color and contrast, embedded and linked media, slide titles for PowerPoint, tables, text, and STEM content, mathematics. And because we're talking about PowerPoint today, taking a look at where the accessibility checker is and some other tools that make checking the accessibility of your PowerPoint easier. So the outline view, the reading order panel, making use of Slide Master, which I did for this entire presentation, and looking at the slide and speaker notes for additional accessibility for your students. Also, this came in as one of the questions, lengthy alternative text. What do you do with that? And then providing some tools. So looking at basic accessibility, we're going to get started with alternative text. This is one of those issues that I think is the most difficult because it's hidden from our site. So alternative text, when we place images into a website, into a Word document, into a Canvas course, or any other LMS page, you don't see it as soon as you insert that image into the page. So it's a little bit harder to determine if you have alternative text for an image and what it is. But as we diligently check over our images that we insert into our content, I do want you to consider, why is the image there? Is it for content? Then most likely you will need to put in a description that accurately reflects the content you're trying to convey. Is it context driven? So when you're looking at the content, what additional context is that image providing being embedded into a PowerPoint slide or within your resource? It will most likely need a description. If it's decorative, it's there to provide, graphical or color or style, kind of like my slide background here with the purple and aqua flourish at the bottom, then we can safely mark that as decorative. Within PowerPoint, Office, and now many of the other authoring softwares that many of us have access to, you can usually right-click or get to an alternative text menu and select a little checkbox that says decorative, and that will safely hide the image from assistive technology like screen readers or text-to-speech. Is the image inserted for demonstration purposes? Have you already described the process that you are going through? Say you're putting in technical documentation to accomplish a certain goal. Most likely that image would be able to be marked decorative because you've already outlined the process that the student needs to go through or the other person needs to go through in text, in directions on the slide or within the document. And so you can safely mark that as decorative unless it's providing additional information. And if the image is already described on the slide that you're talking about it, you could most likely safely mark that as decorative as well. When describing images, I put these, common guidelines out there of you want to describe the type of image while not using image or picture of. And what I mean by that is describe the form of the image. So if you have an oil painting or you have a comic book strip, that provides additional context to what the image is compared to just seeing a picture of a dog. It's more descriptive to say an oil painting of a dog, for instance. So use the type of image, and then you don't really have to describe that it's an image or a picture of. Often I'm writing technical documentation, and so I'll use screenshot of, X thing if I need to. And also, we need to keep alternative text short. I used to say we want to keep it short like a tweet, but now X has longer post limits and things of that nature. And no longer do we really have the text message character limits of old. But we do want to keep the descriptions to being around 120 characters or less. It's not to say that screen readers will do a hard stop at that, depending on the settings of the user. But it's good practice to keep it short and succinct. When describing content, most of the time, I'm assuming many of you are instructional designers or working on content that other people have created. And so oftentimes you may need tools and you may not be the subject matter expert over the content that you're helping work on. And one tool that I constantly share with everyone is the Image Accessibility Generator by Arizona State University. It's an excellent tool that uses AI to describe the image that you've uploaded to it. It gives a very long graphical description. It gives you a short alternative text description, and it also OCRs or provides the recognized text out of the image for you. I highly recommend using it. That way you have a starting point. And then, of course, if you are not the subject matter expert, take it back to the subject matter expert, show them the alternative text, and have them edit it. In PowerPoint, there is a generate alt text for me or describe for me function. Please do not use it. It is not accurate. Oftentimes, again, I'll be placing in screenshots of an interface and it will say picture of a cell phone. So it's not very descriptive. It's best to just stay away from that button entirely. Going into color and contrast. Is color needed for understanding of the content? If it is, you'll want to possibly place it in a different way. So one of the big rules is that color alone shouldn't be used to convey meaning. And what that means is if you just have red text in the middle of something and say that all red text is important, individuals with color blindness may not perceive that color properly, or for individuals that may be utilizing a printout in black and white or grayscale will not see that colored emphasis either. So if you have a list of items. One example that I've seen is like poisonous and non-poisonous plants. Uh, Instead, break it into, hey, these are the poisonous plants, these are the safe to eat plants, and having those two separate lists reorganized will, one, make better content, and two, provide a clear delineation between what is poisonous and what isn't. See what your presentation looks like in grayscale. So that's coming back to our is color needed for understanding? And I like to show this off, and that's why I have this up. Let me go to print and let me swap it to grayscale. And now in my print preview, I can look through my presentation and see if anything might be reliant upon colors for the use of understanding, and there isn't. So I like throwing it into print preview view to kind of double check my slides before I send them out, and that's an easy way of doing that. Use high color contrast. And what that means is use a very light background, like my slide here, it's primarily white, and then I'm using a dark text, a black, to have the best visibility of the text as possible. You can optionally reverse that, right? So you can have dark colors, such as our FSW purple, as a nice branding color if you work for FSW, and then have white text on top of that purple. That is a good color contrast combination, for example. But yellow and white as a combination isn't as dark, right? It doesn't provide much contrast because the colors are very similar, and they're both light. So consider using tools like the Color Contrast Analyzer by TPGI, which is free and available for download. Or if you're unable to download and install applications on your computer, you can use the Color Contrast Checker by WebAIM. Let me just visit this really quick because I hadn't realized that it's so wonderful for a long time. But when you use the color picker, for instance, you can use the little eyedropper tool here, and it'll give you the same functionality as the color contrast analyzer. And if I pick a purple and I use the background color of white, we can see that this nice purple on a white background has passing color contrast. For normal text, except for AAA, so it could probably be a darker purple. And what's nice is you can change around some of the color values and you get the hex value here, which is very nice. And so I thought that was super cool that you could select the little eyedropper tool and then pick a color. And it's the same thing with the color contrast analyzer. Let me close out of the browser here. So moving forward, in terms of embedded and linked media, in PowerPoint, it's quite common to have audio narration. And this is wonderful, especially if you're presenting asynchronously to your students. Synchronous, of course, you'd want to ensure that some sort of captioning method is available for the audio in the meeting, like we have today with the auto-generated closed captioning in Zoom. But if you have audio embedded within the slides, consider using the slide notes feature. I'm gonna see how I can do this. It's near the bottom of your PowerPoint window, and it just says notes. When you click on that, you can expand the notes section. And what I like about this is it is actually the speaker notes function for PowerPoint. So you could write out your own script here. But I also have noted if you want to narrate your slides, there's another cool tool from Arizona State University of a voiceover generator where you can place in your script or the text you would like read aloud, and it will provide an MP3 that you can embed into the slide, and then you can just paste the text of the script that it's reading out into the slide notes. So what I like with the slide notes and audio, because captioning within PowerPoint is quite difficult. To get around that, you can let students know that the audio narrations are in the slide notes, and you could even provide directions that when they go to print, that instead of using the full page slides option, that they can use the slide notes option. I don't really have any slide notes for this presentation except for math. And so you can see on the screen for the math slide, I have some notes in my slide notes section, which PowerPoint just pastes directly below the slide representation. Links. So we want descriptive links like ASU voice generator or voice generator with ASU in brackets. We'll get into text formatting a little bit later, but ensure that links are descriptive out of context and are not full URLs. Videos and slides, I'm going to tell you that it's most likely the easiest to go on YouTube and locate a properly captioned video that you can embed within your PowerPoint slides than embedding a video into PowerPoint and captioning it yourself. There are ways that you can do that, but I placed here that adding captions into an embedded video is definitely more complex than locating YouTube videos that are properly captioned. So if you do have examples that you're recording for students, why not upload it to YouTube, ensure that the captions are accurate, and then embed the YouTube video into the presentation? Then you'll have the accurate captions available. Slide titles. This is a rule specifically for PowerPoint. We want to ensure that slide titles are one, present and unique for every slide. If I didn't want to show my slide title here on the screen, say it's a blank slide and I want to keep it, clear and I want to show a certain diagram, but I don't want to have a title, move the title placeholder directly above the slide. And that way it's visually hidden, as we can see in the slide preview off on the slide deck to the left, but the title still remains and it's still unique. So that's one practice. To hide a slide title, just drag it above the slide and then you'll be good to go there. And for unique slides, say we have slide titles here, and I've spanned this over a couple of slides, we'll say 2 of them. You don't necessarily have to keep the same font size. You can make it smaller, like maybe 14-point font. The name of the title or the title of the title will still come through properly for assistive technology for the slide title. And you can check that by going to the View tab and going to the Outline view. And you'll see that there's no difference in the text size for the Outline view, but it's a little less noticeable on the visual slide. The outline view is certainly helpful to see what content is within content placeholders and not just text boxes that have been inserted onto the slide. And this is really important to ensure that content is embedded in content placeholders using the layout options that are provided. So if you do export the PowerPoint as a Word document, then you easily have all of the content from the outline view coming through. So we'll move forward past that. Tables. I don't think that this is quite as prevalent, but maybe it is within the STEM fields. But tables should be presenting data and are not a picture of a table or using the table to lay out the slide into two parts. One of the most handy tools that you have available within PowerPoint is going to the Home tab and using the slide layout option. Not all of them are pretty, but you can adjust them and add additional ones using the slide masters that are available within the PowerPoint. So like with this particular slide, I have a table. So I went in and I created a new master slide of 1_2 content, and it will properly format a table that's in the secondary content spot. So use tables for data. This was me writing my presentation on the first, as much as I hate to admit it. But I was just creating a simple table where I was writing out the actions of what I needed on the 1st of August, and that was to write the presentation, to get more coffee, to answer questions coming to me through Teams, to answer emails, and to complete tickets. So when you do add data onto the slides, ensure that it's pretty much a simple format where you have one row for each piece of data. Merging, splitting cells, all of that sort of thing makes it more problematic for screen reader users to digest the content that's on the slide. Of course, some of the table options in PowerPoint are not the best. I'm just selecting the table here and going to the slide design, and we can see there's some very different color combinations that are not the most accessible, because with this peach type color, with the text in the header row being white, it's very difficult to perceive. And so we can fix that by highlighting the row and making that text black, if I could actually use a mouse. And let me go and adjust this to being black instead. Now this is a much higher contrast combination with the black text on a peach type background. So when you use the built-in colors for any theme, just ensure that you, one, come over here to the table design, pick one with high contrast. I also recommend using banded rows because it makes it much easier to read at a glance. So I have this light gray and then white, so I know where one row ends and the next begins. Text. Do you want people to read it? They need to be able to perceive it. So in that, we want to make sure that text, especially within PowerPoint, is quite large. We don't want to overwhelm individuals with large paragraphs of text, because even though some individuals may be wearing glasses, if they're at the back of the class, a large paragraph of text is going to be quite difficult to read. So if at all possible, make your text larger rather than smaller, especially within a classroom setting. And that's where those audio narrations are quite helpful if you want to reduce the text use the audio narration, or add in additional slide notes. As mentioned earlier, ensure that your links are descriptive. So if we are embedding or linking out to a YouTube video of awesome cats, then I like placing the title of the YouTube video and then placing that it's going to YouTube. So the individual knows when they select this, they're going to be taken away from the slideshow into a web browser and taken to a YouTube video. If you're linking to files like a Word document or a PDF, ensure that you place the file type in parentheses after the title of the document. So example of placeholder text, Word document. And less is more. So use your slide notes or audio narrations with slide notes to elaborate on the text. Math, as great as there have been strides made within the Office suite, I noticed when I was building this PowerPoint presentation and double checking it with a screen reader that using the insert equation option within PowerPoint leaves much to the imagination. And I have that noted in the slide notes because when I inserted it, the screen reader output for the following formula was x equals negative b plus or minus b2 negative 4ac 2a. And that leaves out a lot of context. I'm not a math person, but I know that there's a square root here, and there's also a fraction. And so I ended up making a picture of the math equation, and I used a tool called MathCat that converted the LaTeX notation to a very suitable alternative text. So the same formula, and all I did was right click on the image after I had my text, view alt text. And so I have start of math, x is equal to the fraction with numerator negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac end root and denominator of 2a and fraction end of math. Much more descriptive and will provide better results when actually trying to calculate this, knowing that there's a square root and that there's a fraction as well. So make use of tools. One thing I did is I just searched for a custom GPT on Google and found one that took an image and converted it to LaTeX. I do have that GPT embedded in the slide that will be shared after the session. So make use of tools. Speaking of tools, there are more PowerPoint tools to utilize. So some of the features that are very, very handy that I utilize to kind of make sweeping changes throughout an entire presentation is one, adjusting colors in the design tab. So if I go to the design tab, I could pick a theme. I created this custom theme for myself for this presentation. But if I want to adjust the colors, I want to go under variants. And then for colors, which is just a drop-down menu, I'm going to scroll all the way down with my mouse and go to customize colors. So if I want, for some reason, all of my links within this entire presentation to be black, I can click on the hyperlink color, select black, and then press save. And now all of my links throughout this entire presentation are black and underlined. So big sweeping changes can be made just by customizing your colors within the presentation itself. The other thing is using the accessibility checker. And so I love the accessibility checker, but it's really difficult to, present a workshop on technology when there's not a single version, right? There are many variations available because people are using Macintosh. Some people are utilizing the web to edit their PowerPoints or create their PowerPoints. I'm using Windows and I'm using 365, which not everyone may have. So the safest way of locating the accessibility checker within Word or PowerPoint or Office is by going to File and going to Info and then checking for issues. And there we can pull up our accessibility checker. Alternatively, you can go to View, or no, Review rather, and check accessibility here. The new accessibility assistant is super helpful, primarily because when you're trying to adjust reading order, it actually goes from top to bottom, unlike in the past where you used the selection pane and you needed to reverse the order. So you wanted to go from bottom to top. So the reading order pane I can access because when I click on check accessibility, it has a whole new accessibility submenu where I can do the insertion of captions. I can inspect my presentation without color in grayscale. I can set different things as being the slide title. It's very, very handy. But when I look at the reading order, it goes from top to bottom. So I have my title slide, I have my content placeholder where all of my text is, and then I have the slide number. And just to show the alternative, if you don't have the reading order panel available, you would go to Home and go to Select, and you would open up the selection pane. And when working with the selection pane, what is first, the title, should be at the very bottom. And then you have your content. And then you have your slide number or anything that comes after the main content of your slide. So I like showing off those differences to make you aware newer versions do have it together with the reading order panel, and it makes it much easier. And when you make changes, they do change within the selection pane and vice versa. Fixes may differ also, as I mentioned with the reading order. Many of the same items will be looked for within the inspector, and that's hard to read text for color contrast, missing alternative text, duplicated or missing slide titles, and so forth. I know I'm running close to time here, and I do want to provide time to answer questions, so let me get through the rest of these really quick. So some tips, lengthy alternative text, since I know it did come up as a question within the registration. Consider adding the image on the slide and linking to a different slide, and then placing the longer image description, which I just grabbed from the ASU tool. I uploaded the image and the ASU tool gave me this wonderful image description that was very accurate. And then I just link back to the original slide so people don't lose their place, just in case maybe it's at the end as kind of like an appendix. And then the student can then continue forward looking at the rest of the presentation. That's a best practice that I've picked up on at a conference recently of, using a whole additional slide with the same image there to provide the full image description, since alt text should remain very short. I've also placed in the alt text, a very short description, and then when they're listening to this slide, they will hear learn more about this diagram, they can click on that and then move. And for the alt text of this one, I provided the simple one and I said image description follows. So that way they know, okay, it's not just the same image, but I'm going to have additional information. Tools. Again, these slides will be shared out to all of you. Many of them I've already discussed in terms of tools for workflow, but there are also excellent resources that are available online. And so I picked some of my favorite articles. And now let me go to the Q&A section of the webinar and let's take a look. So if you have a complex document like the inside of a cell or a diagram, how can you describe it with short, concise alt text? That would be our lengthy alternative text example. So you can describe, the cell and it contains these things maybe in text. You have the diagram of it, but then using another slide, you can then get into the nitty-gritty of the other detailed aspects of that particular diagram. I hope that answers that. Do certain table options like black or bolded cell borders make any difference for screen reading? You mentioned banded rows, but are cell borders a good way to help with table contrast if they are not banded? The screen reader does not notice a difference. So that's an excellent question. The screen reader is going to be looking for whether the header row and or first column are set to define the context of the data, so that Steve is related to the name column and that the date of August 1st, 2025 is related to the date column. The rest of these things like banded rows, completely optional. Same thing with the borders. They're not mentioned to the screen reader user. They're more for the visual delivery of the content. So I know for me, I lose track of what row I'm on. So you can use banded. I liked the style of this better, but yeah, borders certainly help if you wanted to have an option where the borders follow under so you can read the lines, or even just full borders all around. You can see that makes it very readable too. So it's really a stylistic preference. If we have a table that is in the form of an image, would we need to convert it to an actual table in PowerPoint to make it accessible? Yes. What I've found is you can just load that table image into ChatGPT and say, hey, make this a table for me. And then you can simply copy the table from ChatGPT or similar AI and paste it into PowerPoint. And then you have a properly formatted table that you can then make a little bit prettier. So absolutely, you want to, because writing alt text for a table, you would have to describe the relationship of the heading with the data for every single row, and you would still need to write out all of the data inside of that table of an, or image of a table rather, to make it accessible. I'm new to hiding slide titles. Can you please share an example of when you might need to hide slide titles? It's really a stylistic thing. So if I have a humongous cell diagram, like we were talking about earlier, and I really didn't want to say like cell diagram and have that showing on the slide, you can still say, cell diagram, and then just use your up key and move the title to the top of the slide. I was going to do that actually for the Venn diagram, because like maybe I wanted to make the Venn diagram and the description a little bit longer. I can simply hide the Venn diagram title, and then I would be able to increase the size of the text if it required much more explanation, and I could maybe even make the picture slightly bigger. What screen reader do you suggest that is free? Excellent question. For Windows, that is going to be NVDA, and that's what I use to test my PowerPoint slide and PDF prior to sending it over to Tom. So I do highly recommend NVDA. And then, of course, if you're a Macintosh user, the default screen reader people will be using is VoiceOver. I find adding a caption or alt text to tables in PowerPoint odd in comparison to other software. Open alt text for a picture, then click on the table to add alt text. Could you share your experience? Adding alt text to a table is not required. I'll just say that right there. So if you come here and you want to come to the table, do a table design, and then add in, I think it's an additional property, and add in a summary or alt text for a table, it's not really necessary. It is better to just maybe put in a caption, like you mentioned, by just going to insert, and I think there's a caption option that's available. My computer's getting a little bit slow there. But yeah, adding alt text to a table, a real formatted table, is not usually necessary. Must you have a slide master to use color variants like hyperlinks? Nope. When you first open up PowerPoint, you can go to the design and edit your colors straight away. You can even pick from themes that are already available. Maybe I want to use this violet one, and then I would go into the violet, and then I can update my hyperlink to being black, and that will change the complete appearance of my entire presentation. If we have a large pull quote on one of our slides, similar to what's used in magazine layouts, do you recommend using the image alt tag for screen readers to recognize it? I understand what you're saying. Normally, I think you could just make or use one of the icons of a quotation, and you can then then you can just say begin quote as being the alt text for that humongous quotation mark. Or within the order, you want to make sure that that humongous quotation mark goes before the body of text that is to be read next in your reading order. I noticed on your Venn diagram example that you do not list distinctions between apple and oranges using bullet points. Can you speak about your choice and why? Honestly, I had thought about pulling it out into bullet points. I was just rushing to create this presentation, so I just used what ChatGPT provided me. But yes, when you are using your image description slide, you can certainly use bullets and make it much more chunked and readable than this very large paragraph.